Greetings, programs, and welcome back to another episode of the Awesome Friday podcast. The podcast where we talk about two movies every week. I'm your host. My name is Matthew, and with me, as is standard, is Simon. Please say hello, Simon.
Hello. Sorry, I was just thinking about Jeff Bridges. Sorry,
Just like... That has nothing to do with anything we've already been talking about for the past 25 minutes.
I was thinking your Tron related intro, which I enjoy very much. I enjoyed very, very much. Reminded me this week of Jeff Bridges was on a roundtable with a bunch of people, including Pedro Pascal. And Pedro Pascal was talking about
The Last of Us. Yeah,
I never played the game before, and he's like, "Oh, what game? I can't." My Jeff Bridges sounds terrible. What game is it? And he's like, "Oh, it's The Last of Us." And he's like, "I never played it, but I did get sucked into a game once." And Pedro Pascal's like, "Oh, which game?" He's like, "Tron." And it's the best. Like, the timing of that joke is perfect, and nobody fucking gets it. Pedro Pascal's like, "Oh yeah, that's the first video game adaptation." I'm like, dude, he just made the perfect joke on the spot. And you need to pay Jeff Bridges a bit more respect. So I felt sorry. So I was just chuckling in my mind while you were doing your co-host introduction, which I'm grateful for. Hello, welcome, thank you for coming back. I was just chuckling in my head about how perfect Jeff Bridges is, just generally speaking.
I mean, I think that is I think it was a Hollywood Reporter Actors Roundtable.
I don't know.
This anyway, some actors. Maybe it was I think it was THR, but I think probably speaking, he's the oldest person at that table, and I think maybe most of it. Like, I think the next youngest person is in that discussion is Michael Imperioli. And I think Michael Imperioli is probably only a little bit older than us. So what I'm trying to say is that most of the people at that table either are too young or were removed from the cultural context to understand what Tron actually was.
No, I refuse that. Like, you don't have to be of an age to know what Tron is. Even my kid knows what Tron is.
I mean, you say that, but I know children who don't know what Top Gun is, so which is a much bigger thing. So
the failure is with the parents. So,
I mean, isn't that always the case?
Yes,
I think that's always the case. Yeah,
it's always the case. Absolutely.
The improper media education of children is always felt to the parents.
I still haven't. I've taken my kids to a lot of movies, and I'm still yet to see them react to any movie the way they reacted to Tom Cruise firing his photon torpedo into the not Iranian base in Top Gun Maverick. Where they did the full classic stand-up arms in the air whooping, which was kind of great, to be fair. But
I mean, that's because that's a perfect moment in a perfect movie.
It really is.
Like, that movie is perfectly constructed. So, yeah, I mean, in hindsight, it's kind of amazing that it wasn't my favorite film of the year. It was just one of my favorite films of the year.
Yeah, no, that's fine. I mean, as a movie, I would rather watch Ambulance again instead of Top Gun Maverick, but that's just a personal preference. But you're right. It's the most impressive thing about Maverick is that that could have easily been a low effort cash in. Like, people would have spent money to watch Tom Cruise pop up in like a cameo role, training the new guys in CG dogfights. Everyone would go, "Yeah, it's fine. It's just a Top Gun sequel. It's made bank. That's fine. It's Tom Cruise." But they put like so much care and attention into it, and I'm sure a lot of that is Cruise. Brilliantly directed by Tron Tron Legacy director Joseph. You're going to say the last name for me.
Kosinski.
Thank you. And so much, like hundreds of hours of actual real life dogfighting that must have been infinitely more expensive than just mocking it up on a green screen. And then they cut together, or they basically shot as much as they could, and then used what they needed to tell the story that they needed to tell. And I love that. And there's so much love in that film, and it really comes across.
I mean, my favorite thing about it is that in a lot of the shots where the other pilots have their like point of view like the cameras right on their face as they're piloting a fighter jet, is that they were in the backseat of an actual fighter jet doing these complicated maneuvers. Which is not my favorite part of this. My favorite part of this is that a lot of the time, apparently, Tom Cruise was just flying the fighter jets. Because,
Oh, of course.
like Tom Cruise is a crazy person who is part of a cult, who is dedicated to entertaining the shit out of us. And I'm not gonna lie. Sometimes I have difficulty reconciling those two things because the cult he's a member of is quite damaging. But
Yeah.
also he cares about movies in a way that I think not. I don't want to say that nobody cares about movies the way he does because I'm sure they are, but he cares about them in a very distinct way that I feel like a lot of filmmakers do not anymore.
When you've got someone like Steven Spielberg going up to Tom Cruise a couple of months ago and saying to him, and he didn't know he had a hot mic, so he wasn't doing it for attention. Thank you for Maverick. You saved the movie industry. You saved
Mm-hmm.
theatrical releases with Maverick. Like we love that film and we recognize it. But when you've got someone of Spielberg's stature who recognizes it too, I think you're right. I think that Cruise has a lot of obviously a lot of issues, but his love for movies is very almost old fashioned now, isn't it? And the great thing is, someone described him once as it might be you, I don't know, the world's best trained stuntman
Oh yeah, that
because
was me.
he's got because well, it's interesting because other stuntmen don't have the financial ability or the opportunity to learn all this shit. You hire the different specialists for the different things, but Tom Cruise now has the money and the arrogance to go, no, you're not going to hire a helicopter pilot. You're going to hire someone to train me to be the pilot, and it's going to take an extra 8 months, but I'll finance it all, and I'll do it. And it leads to wonderful stories like in England, he was filming, or it might have been a Mission Impossible. It was something with a helicopter, and the helicopter had a technical fault, so he landed it in some person's back garden in Sussex. And all the kids came out, and he's like, "Hi, I'm Tom Cruise. I'm making a movie. Sorry, we had to land the helicopter here." And he's like, the car pulled up outside because it had been waiting for him to come down. He was like, and just before he got in the car, he's like to the pilot, uh, once you fix this, take the family out all day, like tours all day in the helicopter, and I'll pay for it. And he paid for that family to go out in the helicopter and do flybys of Sussex for the rest of the day on his own bank, and while he was in the second helicopter. And it's just like capitalism is a terrible thing, but at least he's a demonstration of what you can do with a little bit of money and a little bit of focus. It's is put yourself in the position where you learn all these things and become all these things, and also he does do a lot for his cast and crew as well, and he does do a lot of philanthropy.
I mean,
So
again, yeah,
it's
he's definitely in a cult, but also
yeah, yeah,
like
sure,
every story I've ever heard of him is he's incredibly generous of spirit.
yeah,
And
yeah.
I heard once that on a set, I can't remember what set it was, but I remember being told that on one set the crew was not allowed to speak to him in the mornings, and that was not because he was some prima donna. It was because if someone engaged him on his way to set, he wouldn't make it to set because he would stay and talk. Like, so yeah, he seems like he's probably a really nice guy.
Yeah,
Uh, I mean, I'm sure there's some. I mean, Nicole Kidman didn't divorce him for nothing, and he's in a cult, so
yeah.
it can't. It's not all sunshine and rainbows. But at least
Oh,
when it
there's
comes to making
definitely
movies, he seems like a pretty genuine dude.
yeah. It is. He's one of those people that I think it's very telling that everyone who works with him, especially the cast and crew, are absolutely glowing. And even when there was during COVID, he was filming the two Mission Impossibles. There's a video, an audio got leaked of him shouting at everyone because someone took their mask off. But even it was so different from when Christian Bale did it in Terminator Salvation, and his was really bitter about putting him off his flow and everything. And Cruises was like, all these people got to work. Don't you dare jeopardize these people's livelihood just because you take a mask off. So
Hmm.
even that is like, even when he's angry, he's thinking of other people. I really, really respect that. So yeah,
Yeah. Well, that's nothing at all like the film or movie we're about to,
yeah,
or movie
I'm
style we're
afraid
about to
yes,
talk about.
yeah.
But Tom Cruise. I mean, again, we don't know Tom Cruise, and I hope that everything I've heard about him is true, except for the cult stuff.
But that's
um,
definitely true. It's all that's all true.
yeah. I just, the I've heard that like he definitely benefits from like exploitative practices of the cult, or at least has in the past, but probably still does. And if David Miscavige is listening, where's your wife, David? Where's Shelley? Where's your wife? You creepy, creepy fuck. Um. Anyway,
I don't
uh,
know what that is. I'm gonna have
David
to.
David Miscavige is the head of Scientology, and his wife
Uh,
Shelley has not been seen in public since 2006.
okay.
Like, has not
Is
had.
she?
There's like no one knows. She's no one. No one off the compound has seen her in 15 years, more than 15 years. So
Okay.
there's
That's
it's like a big mystery about like where is she, because no one will talk about her, no one anything, she's just disappeared.
okay.
And David Miscavige, I believe, is good friends with Tom Cruise, or at least was. There's a whole thing. Yeah. Anyway,
Well, anyway, so Scientology. Maybe Zandu came and got her, or whatever
uh,
the super person's meant to be.
I think it's Xenu actually, but yes, maybe
I've never seen Battlefield or Battleship Earth or whatever it's called with John Travolta. Should I?
no,
Okay.
no,
Good.
no, no. I mean, it is bad. It's just bad. I remember watching it
Uh,
a number of years ago and thinking there was a couple things that were at least interesting, but it's not enough to say you should watch it. Like
okay.
unless you're looking to watch bad movies, I just which honestly I totally get. I in some ways I enjoy watching bad movies because it's watching stuff that doesn't work really makes it clear what does work, and when films do
Mhm.
what works, it again that juxtaposition is interesting.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Which is another great segue towards the film we're about to talk
It
about.
really is. It's excellent
But
stuff.
but like Battlefield Earth is just so bad, like just so in. It's just I can't even. It's been too long since I've seen it to cogently speak about it, but it's not a good movie, and but at least it has Barry Pepper in the lead. He's a good person, so that's something.
Okay. All right. Let's get into
Anyway,
our
so
movie, shall
so
we?
let's awkwardly turn our attention to our first film, which is the newly released to streaming. That's Crave here in Canada, and I'm sorry I don't know what it's on in the States. But Shazam: Fury of the Gods, the sequel to I thought the quite good Shazam from a few years ago, is finally out, and so we got to catch up with it. We're a little bit late to the party, and I'm frankly sorry we arrived. But anyway,
If only
uh,
we hadn't got the invitation. That's my takeaway from this.
yeah, I
Like,
mean, yeah. So the film is set 4 years after the first one, which I think is accurate. I think the first one came out in 2019. So yeah, 4 years later. Shazam and the whole family are all still superpowered. All the kids are superpowered. They've been trying to be heroes, but they are bad at it. They cause as much destruction as they stop. Um, and Billy, who is also Shazam, is worried. He's about to age out of the foster system, and his elder sister is about to go away to college, or wishes she had gone away to college. And Freddie, um, his younger brother, who is probably his best friend, is trying to like fly on his own a little bit, and Billy's holding on really tight and not letting this stuff happen. And then Helen Mirren and Lucy Liu show up, and they are the daughters of Atlas. It's Atlas, right?
yeah.
And they've come to like reclaim the power of the gods from the Shazam family. I think it's I don't know. I watched this movie a couple days ago, and I don't really remember the details. I'm not gonna lie, because it's not very good. Anyway, they fight. They fight Helen Mirren and Lucy Liu, and Rachel Ziegler is there. Ziegler, and
Yeah.
and there's a lesson that's very awkwardly learned at the end, and then the movie stops, and everyone is happier for it. This is a bad movie. It's not a very good movie. I don't. I like it's so frustrating because a lot of the pieces are there for it. I think I've said this a million times before, but there are a lot of pieces there that would should make it a good movie, and absolutely none of them come together in a meaningful way for it to be good. You know,
Oh
and I
yeah.
think, and I think what's probably most frustrating is that so Zachary Levi, who is it Levi or Levy? Whatever, doesn't matter. I mean, it does matter, but not for right now. Anyway, he I quite liked him in the first one, and I don't generally like him. He does. He typically has that sort of an air of smugness about him that I kind of find off-putting. And in this film, it's back in full force and dialed up to about 13. And everything he says is every joke he tries to deliver is super cringy. And him and the young actor who play like the kid version uh, of Billy Batson, whose name is Asher Angel, I think. Um, there's like no attempt for them to like match mannerisms. There's no attempt for them to like match their performance to make it clear they're playing the same character. And even if you wanted to argue that he was playing like a more sort of like trumped up version of the character trying to like overcompensate, it still wouldn't work because it's dialed up so high and it's so inappropriately horny. And 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 on the other side of it, like sure, that it's a big problem when your lead is not good. But as long as you have a good villain, you can sort of salvage a movie a lot of the time. And Helen Mirren, I thought, was actually pretty good in this movie. And Lucy Liu is weirdly wooden and flat, and really trying to do arch in a way that didn't work for me. And one of those two turns out to be the main villain, just as a spoiler alert. And I really just couldn't care less because she's trying to do so much with so little, but there's not enough there for her to do anything with, and so just none of it works. And then you could also still save a movie by having a good supporting cast. And this movie actually does have that. I thought that all of the kids were very good. Jack Dylan Grazer, who plays Freddy in particular, I thought was great. And him and Adam Brody do a really good job of matching their performance to be one character. And I thought Rachel Ziegler was good as the sort of, I don't want to spoil what she is in the story, but she's quite good. Um, and I also thought that the parents were excellent. I thought in particular Marta Milans was really great as the mom. She probably is the closest connection to Billy because he has mommy issues, which at least is refreshing for most superheroes who have daddy issues. Um, and Grace Caroline Curry, who gets to play both versions of the younger and of the kid version and the full blown superhero version of I can't remember what her character's called. It's like Lady Shazam, Ms.
Mary Marvel.
Mary Marvel, yeah. And Megan Good, who is 41 apparently, which Jesus Christ. Um, and the young girl Faith Herman, who play the youngest version, Darla Dudley, uh, are both great, playing the character exactly like you would play. Like it might as well be the same actress almost. But none of it is enough to save the film from the main performances being terrible and from the monsters at the end being super generic and bad, and just the film being completely uninspired. There's nothing interesting happening in this film. And I don't know. I feel like I'm rambling at this point, but it's a bad movie. It's a bad
I
movie.
mean,
It's a disappointingly bad movie. I don't know.
I
I
don't
know
just.
you hated it. You hated it more than I do. So why don't you go for a while?
So I'm not sure. I don't disagree with anything you said. I think this film is fascinatingly bad, and not bad in a way that Black Adam is bad. The one positive thing I'm going to say about this movie, aside from some supporting cast, is that it's better than Black Adam, because I don't think you've seen Black Adam, but Black Adam is one star bad because it is the most rote, straightforward, creatively defunct superhero movie that's driven by pure ego and has like between these two movies has self-imploded whatever was left of the Snyderverse.
Well, so hang on
So,
a second.
so
I'm just gonna interrupt you and say that this movie is definitely that too, except for that Levi does not have the ego to pull that off in the same way that The Rock
exactly.
does.
Well, that's exactly the point I was getting to. Both of these movies are completely crippled. I think I have a theory that Levi's ego ruined this movie single-handedly because you definitely like the first Shazam more than I did. But the good thing about the first Shazam, even though it was weirdly violent like this one is, but um, I liked how you had a goofy bunch of kids, basically one goofy kid, because the rest of the kids don't Shazam until the end. Spoiler. But there was a lot more Asher Angel kind of getting his head around not just the whole Shazam mythical aspect, but the fact that he's a kid in a foster system and he's been through so many homes now because he can't find a home and he's got all these issues, and it's a really interesting kind of almost, I don't want to say it's not up to the quality, but that kind of Amblin idea of kids with issues working out their issues with other kids. You know, that nice ensemble Stranger Things thing. It's a fine movie. Like it's totally fine. And when he does turn into adult Shazam, into Zachary Levi, I'm going to say Levi, even if it's Levi, it's Levi. It's done sparingly and it's still kind of awkward. And so I think that's why it works so well because I wouldn't consider Zachary Levi to be a major part of the first Shazam, really. It's really the kid's show. The second one is fascinating because it should be in every filmmaking and script writing textbook of mistakes, of the creative mistakes. It is a unending an unending list of terrible creative decisions. This movie just blows me away with the direction and the scripting and the narrative plotting. It's like every couple of minutes they do something that's a bad idea, and it's fascinating to me because the supporting cast is lovely. I think Grace Caroline Curry. I still don't understand why she's the only one who is the same as a kid as she when she's a superhero. Maybe because she looks absolutely spectacular in the Shazam suit. But
So
you've got
there's two reasons for that actually. One is that the story is that she, as the only one who's an actual adult, like she's meant to be like 20 or something in this
mm,
movie. Like she's missing out on college, right? She's staying home, missing out on college. She's lamenting not being able to do adult things because she is an adult, and so because she's an adult, she stays an adult when she changes into her Shazam form. And the other reason is that she is a little bit famous and incredibly good looking.
yeah.
Uh,
I mean
so,
that's that
so
one I believe. So
those are the reasons.
so what's interesting to me about the rest of the cast is that you can see the difference it makes when the adult actors and the child actors actually, or really the adult actors, it's their responsibility to pair their performance with the children that they still are inside. And I think Good does this really nuanced, it's childlike without being infantile, portrayal of her when superhero Darla is basically still the kid. Even Grace Caroline Curry, who doesn't transform, she still manages make sure that her character has a through line. And I thought Jack Dylan Grazer's combination with Adam Brody that you mentioned earlier really shows the work they put in. And in contrast, again, Levi has done no work whatsoever to try and match his performance to Asher Angel. When Asher Angel was a kid, he's kind of awkward, he's kind of quiet, he's kind of shy, he doesn't do any kind of cocky responses, and Shazam may as well be a completely different character. And the I had to watch this movie in installments because there was only so much I could take of Zachary Levi Pixar acting his way through scenes, like just mugging constantly, even during the scenes with tension, the scenes with emotion, and when the rest of the cast are actually trying to like have an emotional response to the performance, he's just fucking Pixaring, like the crooked eyebrow smiling, just awful on a really he's truly awful in this movie, and the the everything that's come out after this movie. So it came out at the same time as John Wick 4. He went on Instagram Live and basically slagged off John Wick 4 and said, this movie is a much better family movie. By the way, this is a fucking terrible family movie made by people who don't understand what a good family movie is, including the part where they make an adult walk off the top of a building slowly, and after you hear his very audible impact, another character mentions that he pops like a grape. Like, this is not a family movie, and his ego, the way he has talked about this film, he's talked about he's been the first to bitch about how they weren't allowed this cameo, and Dwayne Johnson blocked that cameo, and between him and Johnson and the war of the egos, I'm not sad that this whole thing's imploded. I mean, Johnson can carry it off, but Levi's just got nothing. He's got no screen presence at all. He's got a terrible acting style, and this I wonder when I was watching this, because you mentioned it before I started watching, that why don't the kids have more in this? And
Oh yeah, the
there's one
balance is
scene
totally off.
there's one scene where Grace is talking to him about his worries about aging out, and she's leaving, and don't worry, your mum left. And it's him, it's Zachary Levi in this scene when it should be like, I've got a theory these scenes were written for the kids, and he was like, no, I need more screen time. And his perception of himself as DC superstar is so apparent on the screen. It's so much ego, and when he has his hero like moment at the end, it's just I've this film is just a series of embarrassments, and he's at the top of that pyramid. And honestly, the last 10 minutes when there's a star cameo and the horniness you mentioned comes back in full force, and then there's a post-credit scene. Just I wasn't aware that there could be a level of cringe that high. Just the way it's written, the way it's directed, but his performance in it is so awful. It scuppers. The whole film is ruined by his ego, and that's before you get into the badly done Skittles branding and the terribly like Lucy Liu, who I really like, being just ridiculously wooden. Like, I don't think she knew how to act against the terrible, terrible monster CG that was happening. And
I think that
but
she might have just not had the because like I found that as well. Like Lucy Liu is alternately super wooden or similar to Levi. She's dialed up to about 12 in terms of trying to be like Arch, and I think that she's trying for this like cartoon thing, but it just doesn't work against the tone of the rest of the film, right? Like,
yeah,
and and I
I
really
thought the
like
same.
I really like Lucy Liu. I really do, and
Yeah,
I don't understand how I don't understand her performance in this film. I just don't.
I I feel the same way about I can't say his name. Jaimin Hunsu. Help me out here.
Jaimin
Um,
Hansu.
so he's a really good actor, and his first scenes are some of the worst acted and directed scenes I've seen in a big movie tempo in ages. Like, what does it take to get a bad performance out of this actor who has established themselves? And even Helen Mirren does her best to save it. There's one particularly great moment with Helen Mirren, but even her performance is really flat in places. On the plus side, Rachel Zegler is wonderful. I think she's a really connected actress with great presence. I mean, she's a total theatre kid, and it comes across like she's got a great vibrancy in the roles she's had so far. And she does her best here as well. I've mentioned I love Grace Caroline Curry and Megan Good. I think and really I like all of the kids and supporting kids and adults. They do their best, but
Yeah,
really,
the supporting cast is pretty much uniformly good. I
yeah.
would say.
But the last I texted you, and it turns out we had the same reaction to pausing what feels like the absolute climax of the movie and finding there's another hour left, and
Oh
just
yeah,
my heart dropped. Like, how can there be another hour of this left? And it turns out there shouldn't have been another hour left. It's dragged out. Again, I am convinced Zachary Levi went back and had the script changed and had the shooting changed to give him more hero moments and Pixar moments. And even in the moments of absolute peril, he's looking behind himself and making stupid fucking Friends level jokes, and it doesn't work at all. He doesn't have the charisma. He doesn't have the delivery. He's not Nathan Fillion. He doesn't have that in him to do it. And I'm just very, very glad that we're not going to see him as Shazam again. Like, James Gunn can be as diplomatic as he wants. We're not seeing Shazam, Zachary Levi as Shazam in the DCEU again. And thank God for that, because he is just an awful, egotistic actor who I think probably uh, ruined this movie more than it needed to be. Whew.
Yeah. Wow.
Anyway.
That was quite a tear you went on. Let me just read. Yeah. So I was taking notes because I watched this at home. So I was taking notes as I watched, and let's just read a couple of them. Yeah. Here's one. Why are there 53 minutes left at what feels like the start of the climax?
Uh-huh.
Uh, and this is my other thing: is that like the film, even if you put aside his performance, Zachary Levi's performance, for a moment, the film is also just not very well written.
Mm-hmm.
Um, there's two things, like Billy Batson's whole thing through the whole movie. He has two things going on. He has one group of people saying, "You're holding on too tight." Well, they're not saying it, but it's obvious. It's like in the text that like he is holding on too tight. He's not letting anyone do their own thing. He's not. He's trying to keep them so close, and in doing so, he's pushing them away. And then you
Mm-hmm.
have a whole group of people being like, "You have no wisdom." Like one of the first letter in Shazam is for the wisdom of Solomon, and like multiple people tell him he does not have any wisdom, and um, only one of those things gets resolved. Like there's two of them, so neither one has the space to develop, and only one of them gets a real resolution. And then after it gets a resolution, there's a whole other climax of the film. Like, that
Mm-hmm.
was my other problem. Is you were saying it feels like he like the part of the end of the movie was rewritten to give him a bigger hero moment, and that feel because like the he does get a hero moment at the end, and it doesn't sort of fit
Mm-hmm.
with the rest of the movie. And I mean, you can make you can make an argument that it does fit with him like finding wisdom, but it's not the kind of wisdom they've been talking about this whole film, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't make sense. None of the story works. And
Mm-hmm.
then my other question is, um, so in the first one, I didn't actually think this was a problem, but I distinctly remember you texting me about it. This is like 4 years ago. Your kids were a lot younger, and I was like, "Yeah, it's a pretty good family movie." And you watched it, and you were like, "This is too scary for my kids."
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and I was like, "Okay, fair enough." Um, this movie has the same problem, but but the tonal mismatch of the fact that it's clearly aiming for children, but the monsters are terrifying, um, and bad. Just to get that out of the way, but the monsters are
Yeah,
bad.
it's so bad.
But like,
Really bad.
there's a whole thing, a running joke through the movie with unicorns, and when Chekhov's unicorn finally shows up, it's nightmare fuel. Like, and it just would have been like if you anyone who's seen the movie, just imagine the scene with the unicorns, but make the unicorns like traditional, beautiful unicorns, and it becomes a lot better in my mind. Even if you have to insert a scene of one of them being violent before they become tame, you know what I mean? Like
Mm,
it's
totally.
that incongruence would be funnier than what we actually have,
Exactly.
which is them riding demon horses into battle, and it just
It's
doesn't make.
exactly. Sorry, I'm going to interrupt you there because that is exactly what they did in the Lego Movie and got it absolutely perfect. That contrast between these the cute animals who are absolute like maniacs is far better than the terribly like the design of all the monsters is just even beyond the CG being bad. It's just really bad. It's really bland and there's no creativity there at all. Sorry, you can please
I mean,
go
it's
on.
also that like a big thing is that the bad guys want to get this seed of the tree of life and plant it to like regrow their god dimension or whatever it is, and then they do plant it on Earth, and it just immediately spawns monsters and is totally like
Mm-hmm.
gross. And there is a moment later on where they hand wave away what this would be, but it like there's no warning for like it feels like parts of the script are out of order. Like
Mm-hmm.
it feels like if you can imagine this, imagine if someone had said if they get the seed of the tree of life, and then someone tries to warn Lucy Liu, like, if you plant it on Earth with this ill intention, this is what's going to happen, and then that's
Mm-hmm.
what happens. That would be what, maybe that's a little predictable, but that's also a functional arc of story, right? Like, if you do
Mm-hmm.
this, this consequence will happen, and then
Mm-hmm.
her being like, no, I will, it'll be great, and then it actually being bad, and her going like, oh, it's bad, you know. But it just happens, and then like 10 minutes later, someone just hand waves it away. It's just not a functional script.
Mm-hmm.
And again, I'm really frustrated because I actually really like the first Shazam, and I think that Levine was good in the first Shazam, and I do think he's an actor who has, again, has that he has a smugness about him that I don't always like. That, for example, he was in
Yeah.
a season of The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel, and I generally liked him, but it definitely comes out at times in that one, and I could sort of get past it.
Mm.
Um, and he was in his another movie he was in that I thought he was pretty good in. Like, when it works for his character, I think he's good. And when he's playing a child like he does in the first one, I think it works. But when he's playing like a smug, randy teenager like he's in this one, which again, Asher Angel is not, um, it doesn't work at all. Anyway,
Mm-hmm.
that's so. How many stars are you giving Shazam? I'm going to predict one.
No, so I gave Black Adam one, and I feel like I really like the supporting cast. I want to recognize the work that everyone around Zachary Levi actually did to match their characters with the actors, and I think there's enough here for me to go 2 stars, but those 2 stars are purely only for the work of the supporting actors. And also, I feel like this is bad, but in a really interesting way, whereas Black Adam was bad in a really bland way. There's no conversation to have about Black Adam because it's exactly every part of that movie is exactly what you could predict at the second would be, and it's done in the most bland way. And I think this movie is a teachable bad, whereas Black Adam is an avoidable bad. So I'm going 2 stars.
What's interesting about this to me is that, just about this comparison, is that generally speaking, I think that Jean-Claude Serra, who directed Black Adam, is generally
Yeah,
a more interesting filmmaker than David F.
yeah,
Sandberg is.
he's totally is. Yeah, yeah.
And it's amazing to me how bland. Like, even he did Jungle Cruise, which is not great, but it's at least good.
Mm,
Like, it's at least fine.
yeah,
But
yeah.
it's amazing to me how maybe he just needs to stay the king of like character centric B movies, because things like The Shallows and the Commuter are kind of great. Like, they're perfect versions of what they are. And when he's let loose with a larger budget and a bigger scope, it doesn't seem to be working. But that's definitely true of David F. Sandberg as well, because David F. Sandberg has
Yeah,
made a couple of pretty good horror movies.
yeah.
And again, he has this much larger scope, and it doesn't seem to be working for him. I will say
I
about Black
wonder.
Adam, and I know this is not a good point for you, but I will say at least Black Adam had Pierce Brosnan being the most Pierce Brosnan, and like being trying to be interesting, which would which would be more
I don't
interesting if
know.
his it would be more interesting if his character wasn't just Doctor Strange in a different colored cloak.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
I thought he was at least at least he seemed like he was having a good time, and nobody else. Him and Aldous Hodge seemed to be having a good time, and nobody else was.
Yeah. I wonder, with both these directors having come from, say, a more indie background, if you will, like I love The Shallows as well, and they've demonstrated their ability, but I wonder how much the DC machine plus the egos of their stars, they've both had to try and make a film around a more visible star's ego now, and have both failed. So I wonder how much the machine has kind of chewed them up as well. I would love I'm going to use your metaphor. I've never done this before. I would love the inside baseball with the director, with like the director of Black Adam and Shazam 2, just to get them drunk and like off the record, like, dude, come on. I know you didn't get to do what you wanted to do here. How bad was it? Because I think there'd be some great stories.
Yeah, you're probably not wrong. Well, just for the record, I will also give this film 2 stars, and it is pretty much again similar to you. It's pretty much entirely because of the supporting cast,
Mm.
um, and yeah, it's just a shame because I again I genuinely think Shazam 1 is one of the best of the DC universe movies. One of the three best of the DC universe movies, and uh, I'm not, after the first one, I was really excited for this one, and after this one, I'm sort of glad that they're just resetting everything.
Yeah,
It's
it was bad,
yeah,
real bad.
yeah.
Okay, let's move
Let's
on. What? Oh, movie number two.
movie number 2, which is also a movie aimed squarely at children, except in this one, it's fun. Simon, why don't you give us the lowdown on the Super Mario Brothers movie of 2023?
Well, Super Mario Brothers movie is made by Nintendo, and obviously with Illumination. Now, I want to start by saying that for me, I've been a proponent for a long time that Illumination should be mentioned in the same breath as Pixar. It's like Illumination are Pixar if they decided to be a bit more populist and less kind of picky. Like I really love Illumination movies. I think they've got a great humor to them and a great design. So I was very, very excited for this film. And in Super Mario Brothers, these two brothers who are plumbers, Mario, and Luigi Mario, for they are the Mario brothers, are in Brooklyn. They're very, very Brooklyn. They're plumbers, and they, through a series of hilarious mistakes, get sucked into the Mushroom Kingdom of the Mario video game. Now, if you've ever played the Mario video games, Nintendo, surprise, surprise, who are famously protective of their IPs since some very bad movie adaptations in the 90s, uh, are basically here to remind you of all the parts of all the Mario movies, Mario games that you like,
Hmm.
apart from Mario Golf. This I find this movie fascinating because basically Luigi and Mario go into various iterations of the Lava Kingdom. You've got the Mushroom Kingdom. You've got a bit of Luigi's Mansion in there. You've got Diddy Kong Racing. You've got even a mention of Mario Galaxy, and it's all absolutely laser guided, Nintendo promoted with that illumination snappiness. With the I find this movie fascinating because I've never seen a movie that's so aggressively made to be a 3-star movie, and that's the only way I can describe it. It's like there is zero there is one creative risk that you could maybe say, well, this is a slight creative risk. And what I love about Illumination is that they take many, many risks. But oh boy, if Nintendo held the reins on this one, because this movie is basically a laser guided promotional video of all the things you love about Mario with a little bit of that Illumination magic. It is an aggressively 3-star movie, and this is not an insult. It is absolutely disinterested in trying to add any different elements to how Mario exists in the 3D video games. And so that's fine. You get a really good montage training, you get a really beautiful rendition. I mean, the whole thing looks gorgeous, it's brilliantly animated. Illumination are a fantastic animation company. The voice acting is fine, even though a couple of parts are in the wrong place. I'll talk about that later. Um, and you have a very good Mario Kart Diddy Kong Racing action set piece, even though it doesn't reference Mad Max Fury Road like Moana does. It really should have. And of course, you have Rainbow Road, and then of course you have the final battle against Bowser, who's brilliantly voice acted by Jack Black. The only one who really tries to do a voice is Jack Black. And then, of course, uh, they all learn lessons. They learn about being strong, and they spoiler, they beat Bowser in the end in hilarious circumstances, and it's totally fine. Like, my kids came out, they're like, yeah, that's fine. They didn't whoop like they did in start in Top Gun Maverick, but they're like, yeah, I recognize every part of that movie, and oh look, it's this, and I've played that, and it's this guy, and that movie's totally fine. There's technically nothing wrong with it, but it is absolutely risk free, and that's why it's made $1 billion worldwide, because it knew exactly what it was. It knew exactly how to get the audience. There is no risk here for families, for old people, young people. Everyone knows who these characters are. It is massively overperformed, and that's why we're going to get a shit ton more of them, which I'm totally fine with, because they know how to make the perfect 3-star movie. What do you think?
I mean, I don't particularly disagree with anything you're saying. I will say that there's one little twist in the film. Well, twist is the wrong word, but there's one little shift in the film that I quite like, and that's that they make Luigi the damsel, which is pretty evident from the trailer. I don't think it's a spoiler that
Right.
like it's
No.
Luigi who's been captured, not Princess Peach. And I
Uh-huh.
think that that's I mean, you're talking about like laser guided to be 3 stars. And to be exactly what it is. I think that's a really good example of, you know, they're going to put in this semblance of a risk. Like it's not really a risk, but it's a change to the story that feels like a risk. When a real thing they could have changed, for example, would be maybe don't make Bowser so horny for Peach. You know, like
I like
he's
that
I
though.
mean, it sort of works within the film. However, he also like it's very clear that like he wants to marry Peach because he wants to bone her, and I mean it doesn't have to
Wow.
be that way. Like it's like again, I'm not trying to say that the movie is bad exactly. I'm saying that if they really wanted to take a risk, maybe they could have made him horny for Luigi. You know, like
Oh,
take take an
have
action.
you met Nintendo?
Yeah, I mean, take like so. This is the problem. This is the one problem with the film. You're not wrong. There is exactly zero real risks in it. However, like if you enjoy Nintendo stuff, I mean,
Yeah.
yes, it's thinly plotted. However, it's a tight 90 minutes and it's fun throughout. So,
Right? Nothing
like,
wroong with it at all. Yeah.
there's nothing wrong with it at all. I'm curious, who you think Charlie Day should have actually played?
So,
Um,
it's so obvious to me that Charlie Day and Keegan-Michael Key should be in opposite parts. Charlie Day should have been Toad, and Keegan-Michael Key should have been Luigi, because Keegan-Michael Key's got a brilliant Luigi delivery anyway. And
hmm,
for his voice as Toad, they put his voice through a voice synthesizer to raise it so he sounds exactly like Charlie Day. And Toad's character is this hyper anxious, squeaky, like, but we're all going to save the day anyway. It's written for Charlie Day. It's written for his voice. And it's so obvious to me how he should have been Toad and Keegan Michael Key should have been Luigi. But it's fine. They're fine as their parts, but they should have been switched.
I mean, exactly. I don't disagree with that take exactly. However, I wonder if it comes down to Charlie Day being like, "Really, you want me to be the high pitched hyper guy again?" Um, because that's I mean he's I don't think he's in danger of being typecast exactly, but like that is his type, you know. Like
Yeah,
I think
exactly. But he does
I
it so
I
well.
I think that there's something to be said for breaking out of your comfort zone a little bit. Anyway,
Oh, sure. But Toad's first line is "Don't touch that one," and it's vocoded up to sound exactly like Charlie Day. Why not just cast Charlie Day,
uh,
or 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 have Charlie Day do Luigi and Toad? See, now we're talking.
I
Anything will
mean
happen.
maybe I will say there are a number of things that I really liked in this movie, and most of them I think um, are they're sort of I really enjoy the sort of like set dressing of Nintendo stuff. Um,
Mm,
and if you
mm.
look, some of it's right out front, but some of it, like there's a scene toward the climax where there's like a wedding's about to happen, and there's a shell on a bench, and a person sits down and bumps into it, and it starts going back and forth between the side of the bench and the person. It's there's a ton of little stuff like that in the background if you
Yeah.
look for it.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
and I don't know what he's called, but what's the little glowy guy who's in the cage called? You're more familiar with Nintendo than I
Oh,
am.
so that's the that is, oh god, my kids told me, I can't remember. In Super Mario Odyssey, the mayor of New Donk City is Paulina. Pauline, sorry, who was the original damsel when he was Jumpman saving the woman from Donkey Kong. That is her star in New Donk City. So the whole film's full of like little things like that. But you're
Well,
right, the
anyway,
stars.
There's one like glowing ghost like character who just shows up every once in a while to say something really terrible in a really hopeful voice. Like there's a great time where they're like, "How long have you been here?" And the little ghost says, "Time, like hope, is an illusion." And at one point, like Bowser announces he's going to kill all his prisoners, and the star goes, "Finally, mercy."
The sweet release of death.
Yeah,
Yeah, I love that. That's clearly mine and everyone else who's our age. That's their favorite character. The nihilist star is the best character, and it's the only thing that approaches the Illumination kind of borderline adult humor with many of their animated characters.
yeah.
It does have.
It's like almost subversive, almost.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah,
I also they let Jack Black have a song, and that was a good idea because his song is fantastic and it fits perfectly. And I kind of wish that's another singular moment of zaniness that I kind of wish Nintendo had like released the Reigns bits. We could have a bit more of that, but it's a total earworm. Um, but those are really it for any kind of creative subversion going on, and
yeah,
it's
but
the whole movie is really fun. The
like the
whole
whole
movie,
it's fun from front to back, and
yeah, it looks great.
also it is like gorgeously animated.
Yeah, it really is.
Like everything looks amazing. There's one scene in particular toward the beginning of Bowser like walking down like a walkway, and you can see like individual scales on his legs. Like it is so gorgeous.
Uh-huh.
Um, and I also just really like that. You know, a lot of movies would do the thing where like you know the normal plumber ends up in a fantastical land and they're just like, oh yeah, they try to like make it a little more grounded. But in this one, he shows up in the magical land, and Princess Peach is like, yeah, if you punch the box with a thing, you get a power up, and then you can throw fire. It's a thing we can do here. It's the thing that happens here. It's fine. Um, and I sort of like that it goes whole hog into that, just being like, nope, you're in a video game now. It's fine. Just
Mm,
roll with it. Just roll with it. Like, yeah, we have
yeah.
power ups. That's a thing we can do. It's pretty great. And
I,
I don't think that's a creative choice. I mean, it is obviously a creative choice in the big C kind of way, but I just think it's an interesting choice where so many films these days would totally go the other way. You
mhm.
know,
Sure.
one day Mario will fall into the public domain once we're in the dystopian, and at that point we're going to get like a Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey style horror movie where the Mario brothers are murderers or something. But until that day, that's about as creative as this franchise is going to get.
Yeah. Yeah, you're not wrong, and I'm trying to make sure I don't sound negative about this film because it is a really fun film, and my kids really enjoyed it, and it does exactly what it's meant to do, and I thoroughly welcome more of them because I love Illumination, and you're right, it is out. There's so much detail uh, and flow and musicality to the way it's animated. And there's a lot of energy to the movement as well, and it looks gorgeous. We do need to talk, though. We need to have a conversation about uh, obvious needle drops because, as you pointed out, this is now the second
Oh
movie.
yeah, hang on a second. I'm just going to say, if I had a nickel for every time in 2023 that a character played by Chris Pratt uh, dashed off into action, set to No Sleep from Brooklyn, I would have exactly two nickels. But it would still be weird that it happened twice, right? Because
It's,
that's definitely yeah. And there's another one
and
too. Go on.
yeah, no, you're right. It's just and there's a fight scene to I Need a Hero, which is now the second fight scene. It happens in Shazam too, and he references it. No, am I saving you to I Need a Hero? And it happens in this as well. And I'm all for needle drops. I this might have been something I was a little. I'm starting to get a bit allergic to over obvious needle drops, and Guardians 3 was not was not innocent of that either. And I would like a bit more originality, but with the needle drops. But this is very much a specific me thing, I think.
I mean,
A good needle.
I think it's a question of execution because I think that I think "I Need a Hero" is actually a perfectly fine song to set an early action scene to in a movie like both of these.
Mm.
But then when you have a character, and your Zachary Levi impersonation is spot on, might I say.
Okay.
Um, but when you have a character who like awkwardly like, oh my god, this song amazing, like, uh, and it's I think even that was better delivery than was in the movie. And I'm just saying that like when it works, and when it doesn't, it really doesn't. So it's
Mhm.
a it with a song with an obvious drop like that, it is something that um, it's a difficult needle to thread, I think, and I think it's I would say that both of those. I would say that the No Sleep Till Brooklyn one is probably better in Guardians, but I think it's actually appropriate in Mario, and the I Need a Hero sequence is far more appropriate than it is in Shazam. So I don't know.
Yeah.
I feel like again, there's that's just what we said at the start. There's nothing wrong with this movie. It's totally
No, there
fine.
really is. Yeah,
It's
there
here.
really is.
If we sounded all negative, take this information away. It became available on demand here in Canada this week, and I did the thing that I always do, which is because I don't generally pirate movies anymore. Because there's a whole conversation about piracy we should have on a different show, but I don't do it anymore. And so in Canada, when a movie is freshly on demand before it's like streaming or available in physical, you have a choice. You can buy it for 30 or you can rent it for 25. And most of the time when a movie like this comes up, we sort of I hum and I haw, and a lot of the time I'm like, well, it's only $5 extra. And sometimes I'm like, $5 extra at the end. And sometimes I'm like, oh, that was totally worth it. And this is one of the times where I paid the 30 and it was totally worth it. I will
Hmm.
definitely watch this film again.
Yeah.
So, and like honestly, even if I only have it for like when your kids come over or, my nephews come over or whatever, that would also be fine because it's a movie I'm totally fine to just put on in front of them. But it's also just a fun movie. So, I
There's
don't
a,
regret having purchased it. So, do with that
there's a,
information what you will.
yeah, there's a lot to be said for a film intentionally being made suitable for all ages. And I don't just mean good for kids. I mean, this is a movie adults can enjoy too, especially people our age who, if you've played a video game and you're in your 40s, you know you have a knowledge base of who these characters are. And it is very, very faithful to that knowledge base. It's not like the live action movie that completely went off on its own tangent. It is very, very faithful, and it's really, really fun. It's a very easy watch, so you could do a lot worse than watching the film.
And it's a tight,
And
again, it's like a tight 92 minutes. So,
yeah, yeah. At no point did I pause this movie and wonder to myself, "How is there an hour left?" uh,
yeah.
God, God, it was Shazam 2 is just awful. But the what I'm really happy about this film is that we're going to get more of them, and I love their approach to it. I know I'm trying not to sound too negative about it because I really enjoyed it. It's really, really fun, and I think it's wholly successful in what it tries to do, which is be a movie, a 3-star movie for everyone. And I think there's a lot to be said for that. Now, when they make the next one, I'll be very curious because at the end, when they don't know where Princess Peach has gone, and she says, "Who knows?" He says, maybe you're." That's my Brooklyn voice. "Maybe you're from Earth," and she says, "I don't know. There are a lot of galaxies out there." And the next movie is going to be Super Mario Galaxy, and that is a visually stunning video game, and I'm sure they are going to blow that out of the park. And the great thing about Super Mario Galaxy is that you had infinite pockets of biomes, all slightly different. So you've now got that multiverse style. Let's jump between these wildly different environments. So I think it's a win if they just take the same approach. The next movie's already going to be a win, isn't it? And now
Although
maybe
there's a post credit scene in this movie that's an obvious callback to, for those of you who have actually watched it, 1998's American Godzilla film, and honestly, I part of me as a we talked about this before, it can be fascinating to watch bad movies and learn from them. I kind of hope they run with that a little bit.
God, that would be amazing.
Yeah,
Like a kaiju Yoshi, that would be incredible. But yeah, I mean they won't. But
yeah.
yeah, I part of me would be curious and maybe want them to maybe be a bit more obtuse, maybe a bit more out there. But I don't care. It's going to be beautiful. It's going to be fun, and it's coming. So we might as well let it
Yeah,
happen.
just let me agree with you in that I don't think that there's anything wrong with to put it in baseball terms, like not every film's going to be a home run, um, but it's a double right up the middle is totally
Right.
fine, right?
Absolutely, I totally. It's exactly what I thought. This is like a half run around the diamond, and the ball is in the court of the outfield, and they're going to throw it back, but they're safely on like second base, and that's great because they've loaded the bases for the sequel.
I mean, it puts the runner in scoring position for sure.
Right, right, and the umpire's there, and he's smiling, and everyone's happy.
I do love that you picked up a lot of baseball from me, but none of the terminology whatsoever.
Like
Like,
I do enjoy
like,
that when
like
I
I
when I talk
totally,
about
I totally love that you seem to understand the game now, but don't know how to talk
baseball.
about it.
Absolutely. I sound like you've asked ChatGPT to describe baseball. That's how I talk about baseball. Like it's an AI kind of talking about it, but in the wrong way. That's fine. I
Yeah.
enjoy it in my own little way. So, how many stars are you giving Super Mario Brothers movie?
I don't think it's going to be a shock to anyone to find out I'm giving it 3 stars.
Yes, and I am also going to give it 3 whole stars, 3 power-up stars that are going to make you feel invincible with happiness when you watch it, or something. That's a
Something
reference
like
to the
that.
end of this movie. Yeah, um, yeah, it's fine. It's good. I like it. More, please. But uh, it's a different conversation. Do you know that Seth Rogen refused to do a voice when he was hired for this? And he said this in interviews. When he was hired for Donkey Kong, he said, "Well, I'm not going to do a voice. I don't do voices. It's my voice, or that's it. I'm going to do my voice." And I would like voice actors to kind of understand that they should be a bit more dynamic with their performance. But anyway, that's a tiny little point. Jack Black was great.
Yeah, but to your point, I would like Jack Black's voice has obviously been put through some kind of synthesizers, like Keegan-Michael Key's has as well.
See, I was
And,
wondering about that because he sounds so gruff. That might actually just be him being a gruff voice, though.
and I will say that I think you don't with some when you hire someone who has as distinct a voice as Seth Rogen. Why would you ask them
Mm.
to change it? You're hiring them for that voice. You're
He
hiring them.
probably wrote.
You're hiring him for that goofy laugh, right? Like I don't like. Why would you hire Seth Rogen and be like, by the way, change yourself entirely for this kid? Like, no, no. You're hiring Seth Rogen to sound like Seth Rogen. That makes sense to me.
That's fair. They probably wrote the Donkey Kong lines with his laugh in mind, didn't they? So yeah, that's probably fair.
I mean, certainly if they didn't at first, as soon as they hired him, like we got Seth Rogen, oh, let's put
Yeah,
some of this
yeah,
stuff
it's
in. Like
the right one.
how can we work in a veiled reference to marijuana? Can we this time, or we have to wait for the sequel? You know?
Uh,
Yeah,
good. Well, yes. Go watch this movie, or it's now on demand. Stay at home, watch this movie. Get some popcorn. You'll have
yeah,
fun.
yeah, exactly. Good. Well, I think that's clearly where we're going to wrap it up for today. So if you are new here, thank you for listening, and if you're not new here, thank you for listening. We love everybody. If you have liked the show, if you like what you hear, you can, of course, support us. We have a Patreon and a Ko-fi, and both of those will be in the show notes. If you are a Patreon subscriber at any tier, you do get our bonus conversations, which vary in length from like 15 to 25 minutes, depending on the week. And this week's in particular was all about It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. So go and enjoy that. The subscriptions start at as low as $2 a month.
Ooh.
I know, right? Such a bargain. If if you can also support us just by giving us a 5-star rating on your podcasting platform of choice. Subscribe, share with your friends. Help us get into the charts with those actions. That's actually also immeasurably helpful. You can find us and the show on the social medias, mostly Twitter and Instagram, but you can find me at SmatthewAF on both. You can find the show at AwesomeFridayCA on both, and you can find Simon on Twitter at TemporaryPen. We are in Vancouver and record this on the unceded ancestral lands of the Musqueam and Tsleil-Waututh and Squamish nations. One last time, thank you everyone so much for listening and joining us on this awesome Friday.
Bye.